PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. Norway Chess 2024 is over. It's the morning after the night before, and let me bring you up to date with events. So, Carlsen was leading going into the final round, and as anticipated, he took no chances. He drew fairly quickly with white in the classical game. They went into an Armageddon. He's got white here against Caruana playing black. Typical Carlsen game. Had little pressure, kept the pressure on. Caruana actually defended extremely well until a certain point. So, a queen endgame, another queen endgame between Carlsen and Caruana. And here, well, you can see that that queen looks pretty good, attacking two pawns. Caruana, it's even material. Caruana has a passed pawn, but it's a long way from the queening square. He gave a check. It looks like a pretty plausible move and started pushing that pawn. And the queen also got this one. Carlsen took, and then he started pushing his d-pawn. That's his passed pawn. And because black's king is exposed, in fact, it's fairly easy to push that pawn down the board because the queen checks and then can support the pawn. So here, for example, yeah, queens are powerful pieces. If the king goes up, watch what happens. It's actually checkmate very quickly. And the king went back. d6, you see the queen is in the perfect position to support the pawn. Another check. That's the problem with the exposed king. You can get the queen in the perfect position. d7. And that was the end of the game. Caruana resigned. Of course, that pawn is going through. And crucially, white's king is completely safe. Black's queen can't get on that diagonal. So, Magnus Carlsen won Norway Chess. He finished with 17.5 points. Nakamura 14.5, Firuzja 13.5. But really a dominating performance from Carlsen. He won 3 classical games. He played 6 Armageddons and he won 5 of those Armageddons. That is really impressive. And in Norway Chess women's event, well, the favourite one there as well. Ju Wen-jun took no chances in the final game and playing white against her compatriot Lei Ting-jie, she played the exchange variation of the Slav, super solid. I mean, basically white risks nothing here. I mean, black, this position, for example, has been played, I don't know, dozens of times. You can see white is a pawn up. For example, Carlsen Giri went queen c8. And obviously black has compensation here with the rooks and opposite colour bishops, and it should be a draw. In fact, Lei Ting-jie played inaccurately here. She played queen b6, and after this, it's actually very difficult for black indeed. In any case, white risks absolutely nothing here. This is one of those cases where the opposite colour bishops actually, well, they don't have much bearing. I mean, if black exchanged everything, basically, this is a weak pawn. The king is going to get in combination with the bishop. And in this game, well, this passed pawn decided on the queen side. I mean, this is just a horrible position for black, and Ju Wen-jun won very easily. So this was the classical game, and that put Ju Wen-jun way ahead of everyone else. She won with 19 points, and in second was Anna Muzychuk with 16 points. So the favourite one there. I would like to show you a game by Anna Muzychuk. So this is the last round Armageddon game against Koneru. So their first game was drawn. This is the Armageddon game. So Anna Muzychuk in a must-win situation if she wants to get that extra half a point. I like this game a lot. Anna Muzychuk from Ukraine. very fond of attacking, very enterprising, straightforward attacking play, classical attacking player. So it's a Spanish. Makes a change from our gioco piano. And d6, so this can take the game in lots of different directions. I mean, white could play, this is a line that I always played against this particular system. I always like playing this as white, very straightforward. But one can castle, also excellent. And then b5, so this is yet another little sideline of the Spanish. This is the so-called Norwegian variation. Now it comes to a5 very, very quickly to get rid of this bishop. d4. Now the old way of playing this was to play knight takes and then f6 to sort of make a strong point out of the pawn on e5, but it's pretty risky. You can see that black's development is very poor, but anyway, takes the game in a very different direction. But Humpy played e takes d4. Now in their classical game, Muzichuk took with the knight and then bishop b7. The game went like this. And frankly, Muzychuk didn't really get anything from the opening. Humpy castled, and queen is well placed on b7, looking at e4. Black's pieces very nicely placed, and well, the game drifted to a draw without too much drama. But in between the classical game and the Armageddon game, the players get, I think it's something like 15 minutes. It could even be half an hour, but I think it was 15 minutes. And in that time, Anna Muzychuk had obviously done a little bit of research. And instead of recapturing on d4, she played a tricky little move. Rook e1. So it means that it is going to be possible for white to make a quick breakthrough in the centre with e5 and perhaps catch the king in the middle. And in fact, there have been quite a few miniatures played in this particular line. So Humpy took on b3. Okay, good to get rid of that bishop. But you can see white is way ahead in development. Black, I mean, you know, all these pieces are on the starting blocks, basically. And that's a problem. If black tries to hang on to that pawn, well, this is absolutely what white wants. You play c3, so you've gambited a pawn, but that's one more piece into play. There's even a threat straight away because of the pin here. And, well, for example, if... Well, it's just a very nice position for white. It's incredibly dangerous. With white's pieces coming out here, potential to play e5. You know, all these moves are possible. It looks absolutely tremendous. So I think wisely, Humpy played knight e7. Let's get some pieces out. So, okay, black doesn't want to hang on to the pawn. Knight takes d4. So it's a little bit different to their classical game. It's going to take an extra move to bring this one to develop, because the knight didn't go to f6, which would have perhaps provoked e5. Knight c3, queen d7. And now an excellent move from white. I'm going to let you have a little think here. White to play, what would you do? Cheers. I also realised I didn't show you what Caruana should have done in that queen endgame. I'm going to go right back at the end and show you that, because he was still okay in that queen endgame. Anyway, let's concentrate on this. I'm darting all over the place. So what is the move for white which causes black enormous difficulties? Knight e5. Simple stuff. The knight just throws itself into the middle, onto the attack. And yeah, I mean, black has come to grief in this position on a few occasions. Let me give you one example. So if knight takes d5, check. There you go, that rook coming into play very nicely. Bishop e7. And bishop g5 is fantastically strong, because after f6, then that knight throws itself in here. That prevents the king from castling. And if pawn takes bishop, check. Queen h6. Black is utterly lost in that position. The queen is invading. King is absolutely helpless. Humpy played knight c6. And knight f5 from Muzychuk. I mean, it's one of those moves, I think, particularly in speed chess, that looks so attractive, and it's very strong. There's potential perhaps to play bishop h6. Watch out for this. I mean, it just looks like a great move. In fact, it's even stronger. Take on c6 and then bishop g5. So the basic problem, black can't castle out of this. If f6, then that can just be taken. There's a horrible fork there. And if h6, trying to get rid of the bishop, just bishop f6. And black is helpless here. Basically, white can just build up at leisure. Obviously, that can't be taken. The bishop can't take the knight. The king is completely stuck. And, you know, white can just build up. Queen f3, rook in the middle. e5 is going to come. I mean, it is completely winning for white. I mean, maybe even e5 straight away, actually. Could just be winning on the spot. Absolutely crushing. Simple moves. Knight f5 is also strong. But the king does escape for a little moment. Castles queenside. Bishop g5. Okay, just quick development. And provokes f6. I'm not sure white needs to provoke that, but anyway, the bishop ends up on a very good square. And with an open file for the rook, and perhaps a move like c4 coming to open things up, well, this just looks fantastic for white. It is fantastic. But it got even worse after rook e8. White's play. What did Muzichuk do now? Bishop b6. It's an absolute crusher. We've seen a nasty fork from f6, and now a nasty fork on b6. Obviously, that's not advisable. But then again, what does black play here? It's absolutely horrible. Rook takes played. So Humpy gives up the exchange. But this is crushing. Rook e8. And now just knight takes c7, guarding the rook. And you can see that if the bishop emerges, you just take the rook. So black is completely lost here. And the game finished like this. Rook b8. Wow, those white pieces invading. I mean, that's extraordinary. Mate threats, that's prevented. Bishop a5. Okay, there's a calm move. King h1, of course, black threatens a check. And rook takes rook. So, well, knight g6, there's nothing going on here. Knight takes, that's a nice move. Obviously, if that's taken, then rook takes bishop. So bishop d6. Knight b4, attacking the queen. And rook takes bishop. Check. White is now a whole rook up. And Humpy Koneru decided enough was enough, and she resigned. Well, what a crushing victory. But I tell you what a subtle move. Instead of knight takes rook e1. Just a little bit different and a little bit menacing, because perhaps e5 is coming at some point. And that was enough to completely discombobulate Humpy. So there we are. Listen, I should go back to the Carlsen game, because I didn't show you what Caruana should have played. Not that one. That's their classical game. I'm getting confused. Not for the first time. Okay, so here's the position we started with. And if you recall, Queen b1 check was played, but actually this is winning for white after d5. That d pawn went through, aided by the fact that the king is exposed and the queen can check and bring the queen to the perfect position to support the d-pawn. So what should black play? Queen d3 is the move. So you don't get that pawn going immediately. However, the queen is in an excellent position to stop that d-pawn advancing. Now, of course, still tricky. Got to find the right moves. You know, white takes a pawn with check. Comes back to support this one. That's the other thing. The queen looks at this e3 pawn. However, it is possible to get that pawn going, and black has sufficient counterplay to draw the game. See, crucially, that passed pawn is kept under control by the queen straight away. So there we go. That's what Caruana should have done to draw the game. But as I said, this is so typical of Carlsen's games. You know, he piles on the pressure and Caruana did very well until a certain moment. It was kind of a 50-50. You can't judge this in an Armageddon game. You've just got to make the right guess. He made the wrong guess and whoosh, game over. So Carlsen maintains his position as #1 in the world without really any argument at all. In fact, looking at the current world rankings, Carlsen 28.31 in classical chess, Nakamura 28.01, he's just come over 2800 barrier, Caruana 27.95, and in number 4, Arjun Erigaisi, rated 27.71. He's come up on the blind side. Hope you enjoyed my coverage of Norway Chess. There's more coming on the channel soon, and do consider subscribing to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Do investigate that. There's extra videos and stuff. Or if you just want to make a one-off donation, then do click on the button to PayPal. Thanks for watching.